Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Welcome to Kansas City Profiles presented by Easton Roofing. I entitled this particular podcast Force of Nature regarding Gary Lezak, and certainly he is that in many, many ways. Southern California kid who had a passion for weather right from the start. Gary Lezak has really continued on with that for his entire life and has poured himself into it and been an entertainer, but more importantly, a serious weather person who really has devoted his life to it and now has devoted a theory on cyclical weather that he is going to turn into a business, and sounds like a very important aspect of his life that continues to go on with a smile on his face. He obviously has overcome a lot of things in his life, battling through the fact that he lived a secret life really through almost the college years as a closeted gay man. Eventually would come out in 2017, but came out to his friends long before that, and that was obviously something to overcome. His personal success in business has been relentless right from the time of college, but he also had to overcome an incredibly rare form of cancer in 1999. So rare, 6 people in the world get it every year. He'll talk about that, but he won't talk about the fact that it's that rare. He's heard on WHB and does the weather there in a wildly entertaining fashion. He's known for his dogs, his public appearances, and it's just a real pleasure to get the story of Gary Lezak right from the start. California boy to Oklahoma Sooner to Kansas City icon. Very comfortable in saying that. Our fascinating conversation with Gary Lezak straight ahead right here on Kansas City Profiles presented by Easton Roofing. We're here with Joe Spiker, the president of Easton Roofing. And Joe, you worked for other companies in the construction industry. What inspired you to start your own company in Easton Roofing?
Well, you know, Danny, when you are working for somebody else, you oftentimes don't get to see the project through from beginning to end, and you don't get the final control over the customer experience. And I wanted to build a place where people can come and get work done on their house and not have to worry about being treated the wrong way, and get a good customer service experience start to finish.
The company slogan is "Where Integrity Matters." Why is that so particularly important to you?
Well, for us, what that means is treating each other with respect at work, treating our clients with respect, and making the right choice, especially when no one's looking. So when you're presented all the time as a contractor with choices that have to be made, are you going to make more money on this if you cut a corner? And we just wanted to make a place and a slogan that said to our people and to whoever is our customer, we're not going to do that. We're going to make the right choice regardless of profit.
Easton Roofing, where integrity matters.
Hey everyone, this is Matt Llewellyn from 23rd Street Brewery, wishing you well while you stay safe during this time of uncertainty. Due to the recent news, you won't be able to get the same in-restaurant experience at the 23rd Street Brewery that you've come to expect over the past 16 years. But you can get the same delicious items prepared with the highest level of staff cleanliness available for carryout and delivery through our partners Eat Street. You can also still enjoy our craft beers and crowlers for to-go service. So remember, stay safe, and together we will all get through this time of uncertainty.
We're visiting with Larry Marshall, former Chiefs defensive back and punt returner, and now a Chiefs ambassador. Larry is a former pro football player with the aches and pains that come with that, and moving on in age as we all are. What do the Canaway CBD products do for you?
It's been a great relief for me. Being a punt and kickoff returner, collisions were a mainstay of my career, and these Canaway products, the salve especially, has really helped me try to get through every day with the aches and pains that I've had over a career of 7+ years in the NFL.
I get similar benefits as well, particularly with my back. Certainly wasn't a football player. What's the best way for our listeners to get more information about the great products themselves?
Well, I'm so enthused about it, Dana. If they just contact me at larrymarshall.canaway.com, and I can give them all the information they need to help them get through the day as well.
Start gaining all the benefits that Larry and I do from the trusted and reliable line of Canaway products. As Larry said, visit larrymarshall.canaway.com and get information on all the great products from Canaway.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you.
It's a pleasure to talk to Gary Lezak, who I've talked to a million times, but not in this particular context here on Kansas City Profiles presented by Easton Roofing. And Gary, we usually just start off at the beginning. You're a Southern California boy, And what are your first memories, your very first things that you can remember about growing up in Southern California?
Well, good morning or afternoon or whatever time you're listening, Danny. It could be any time of the day or night, right?
That's right.
I grew up in Los Angeles, and I grew up in the San Fernando Valley. I was born in 1962, so I'm about to be 58 years old, which is just hard to believe. And I grew up out there, fascinated by weather. I mean, ever since my first memories, age 5 or so, all I can remember are clouds. Clouds were my favorite thing then, and they're my favorite thing now. And while we're recording this, there's actually a little thunderstorm north of Kansas City I'm watching on the dark skies this morning. But always fascinated by weather since I was 5 years old, and grew up out in the valley. I was a valley boy in Los Angeles, and I thought that one day I might want to be on television, but never really thought I would end up there. But that's how I got my start, was 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. Always interested. There's not a storm that got me interested. I grew up in Los Angeles where the weather was boring, but that's how I got my start.
What was your family life like?
You just go right into it.
Yep.
Sure. My family life. Okay, you're going to have to guide me through this, Dan.
Sure.
I had a mom and a dad, of course. My dad was an entrepreneur, and he had various successes along the way, fortunate successes on the way, and had some bankruptcy moments as well while I was growing up. So it's interesting. And my mom was a school teacher, then a teacher's aide, and then she tutored kids. And so I grew up in a family of 5. I had an older brother, Jeff, and a younger brother, Scott. And so we had a family of 5, and I was the middle child growing up back in 1962 to 72 and to this day. So, and now we're all spread out over the country. But, yeah, I grew up in Southern California.
Would you describe it as a happy childhood?
Yeah, I think so. I think I was a happy kid. I mean, I had an obsession. It was called weather. Are you shocked that I was obsessed with the weather?
No, I am not. But, having an interest and an obsession, I pretty much knew what I was going to do from an early age. You seem like you had at least a track that would involve the weather in some way. Was your enthusiasm for the weather over the top enough that maybe it caused you to get made fun of or anything like that?
Oh, yeah. When I was in 3rd grade, there was a friend that's a friend of mine to this day. In fact, he's a sports agent, Jeff Boris, not the famous Scott Boris,
right,
but Jeff Boris. He's to this day big sports agent. He has his own agency now, and he's doing quite well. If you become a sports agent back in the 70s and 80s, you really do well at this point. And he's a friend of mine, but a really good friend of mine. And so Jeff, in 3rd grade, there was one day there were these clouds developing, and we were like out at recess, and I was going, look at these clouds, this is amazing. And that day, I remember, he goes, you don't know what you're talking about? No one knows what they're talking about. And this is a 3rd grader, and that's how he is to this day. He still thinks I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, tell us, as you started to head towards your high school years, was this all consuming to you? As you grew a little bit older, did you realize that this might be something that could come a profession, or at least something that was a huge part of your life? And what were some of your other interests at the time, if you had any?
Yeah, I had other interests. It was sports. I was a big sports nut, growing up in Southern California, and so weather and sports. And I always, I played games. I made up weather and sports games. My weather games, I'll get to both weather games and sports games that I made up, because I made a card game out of basketball, NBA basketball, and hockey. NHL hockey when I was growing up. I'll get to that in a second if you want to.
Sure.
But it's pretty interesting. You can take a deck of cards and play hockey. Can you believe that? I made up this game. It's really interesting. You're making me think about it right now. But for weather, since Southern California's weather was so boring, I would develop my own weather world, and I would make a circle. It would be like Southern California or the western part of the country, and where I grew up. And I put little circles inside the circle. They'd be cities. They didn't have any names on the cities. I'd call them areas 1 through areas 8. And I would sit up in my room. My mom probably wondered what the heck is going on in there, because I'd be drawing the weather maps and then predicting the weather, even long range. I'd show a long range outlook on there, and I'd be in there going, all right, let's take a look at our weather forecast for today. And I would like draw on the map and act like I'm on TV, I guess. And so it started way back when. That was probably 10 years old, 9 years old when I was doing that. And then I also had these sports games. The hockey one is the one that was so fascinating. I made up a game that you can play with a deck of cards right now. And I was a huge Los Angeles Laker fan, Los Angeles Kings fan, Los Angeles Dodgers fan. And so when I was young, I mean, I just was a sports nut from the very beginning. And so with a deck of cards, when you see an ace, that is like a shot on goal. Okay. And then if an ace, a 2, or a 3 shows up after the ace, it's a goal. So you play the cards, you mix them all up, and you just start playing. And the Los Angeles Kings, they have the puck. They're coming down the field. I shoot, it's scores! If it's like a 2 following a 3, the ace. If it's an ace with a 4 or higher following it, it's wide of the net or hit the goalpost. And you play through the whole deck, and you have one deck for one team, or if a team scores, then the other team gets the puck. And as soon as a shot and it's missed, then it goes to the other team, and I would play a game with a deck of cards with the ace followed by the 2 or a 3 being a goal. Isn't that interesting?
That's amazing. I don't even know if I want to get into this, but it sounds like the basketball game would be a little more complicated.
It was, but I can't remember exactly what I was saying, how I played it.
Right.
But you would get points for certain cards that came up at certain times as well. But it was the NBA game was definitely more complex than that hockey game. But it was. Right. I used to play. I'm thinking about it right now, Danny. I might sound a little crazy here, but I used to have the leagues. I would have the Kings and the Canadiens and the Boston Bruins, and I would have all these teams lined up in divisions, and I would play games all the way to the playoffs.
Well, I'm sure that resonates with a lot of people because we all have done things like that, and most of the people listening to this probably in some form or fashion have developed some kind of a game or thing to. But it sounds like with your vivid imagination that you might be a kindred spirit with me. It seems like your own company was plenty for you.
Is that how you were?
Well, I do enjoy my own company. That doesn't mean I don't like other people, but I mean these enterprises sound like they took hours on end.
Yeah, they did. I'd be sitting up in my room, and I was probably on the introverted side of the spectrum because of television. It looks like I might be an extrovert, but I'm really more of an introvert. As I said, near the top, very close to extroversion, but really, I gather my energy by myself to this day. So I would say that being up in my room, playing my weather games, playing my sports games, watching the Dodgers, the Kings, the UCLA Bruins were my college team, not USC, of course. If you're a UCLA fan, you hated USC, sort of had that experience. I grew up in the 60s and 70s when UCLA went on their 81 game winning streak, something like that. 82
that's right.
Games.
81 is right. Yes.
81. Wow. And I remember when they lost to Notre Dame. I think in triple overtime or something like that.
Yeah, that Notre Dame scored like the last 13 points of the game or something crazy like that. So yes,
wow.
I remember that game absolutely vividly. Take us towards high school years and how you were developing as a person and what that was like as a social scene for you.
Well, socially, when you're gay and you grew up as a gay kid, I feel like you're born that way. I've always felt that way. I felt that way when I was 13 years old. When I first knew I was gay, I felt you were born that way. I mean, I immediately wondered. I tried to force myself to be attracted to girls, and I tried very, very briefly because it was not happening. So,
right.
So I wasn't, and so growing up, you say, was I a happy kid? I was really happy all the way to 11, 12 years old. And then when you're gay and then you have this secret, and you have this secret that you hold by the time you're about 13 years old, and you realize you're not attracted to women, you're attracted to men, then you hold a secret. So I held that secret for 6-7 years, but I grew up in the valley of Southern California, San Fernando Valley. So it wasn't like a small town in Kansas, like some of my friends. There's horror stories of trying to keep it secret. I was secret, but my brother knew, and then my mother ended up finding out, and that was quite an experience. And but it was years later. So that was a struggle through my teens, and my fascination with weather continued, and then in 1980, when I graduated high school, I felt like I needed to get away,
right,
because of that. Okay, and so I feel like I needed to get away, and in 1980,
let me ask you real quick, how. So you were able to keep this as a secret, where maybe only a small circle of people knew this. Like
no one knew.
In high school, nobody knew. They just
yeah.
Well, that's amazing. But I would see why you would want to get away. And then I guess the question comes: you did get away, all right? You went to Oklahoma.
Yeah. In 1980, before I left, I had a group of high school buddies. Dan, Mark, Neil, Joe, Tom. Jeff Forrest, my sports agent friend, we had a group of buddies, 5, 6 of us, that to this day, we're in contact. So they're my high school buddies. So I had my buddies who did not know I was gay, and they were totally straight. And I ended up coming out to them one by one, by the way. It was fascinating doing that. That's a whole long other hour segment, by the way, so we'll do that some other time. But in 1980, I needed to get away. I went with my mom to various schools that accepted me into college. I didn't have the greatest grades in high school. My GPA was not so good, but my ACT score was good enough. So I got accepted to Oklahoma. I got accepted to St. Louis University. And so my mom and I went to St. Louis U, which is a meteorology school, went to Oklahoma, which is a meteorology school, and a few others. We traveled around the nation just looking to see which school I might want to go to. And the day that I visited Oklahoma, there was a thunderstorm that day, and I'm like, ooh, I have to stay here. So I ended up becoming a Sooner.
And, that's a bit of a cultural shock. You moved from Los Angeles to the Midwest. I actually moved from New England to the Midwest. I'd never been out of New England until I went to college. That was my experience was a couple of years before you. What was that experience like for you? What was the adjustment like to now being in the Midwest/Southwest?
It was interesting. I didn't ever feel uncomfortable. I felt like a natural fit. It was exciting. I grew up in LA where it never would snow. I knew snow by looking at the mountains and going, wow, there's snow on the mountains. How pretty is that? And occasionally I'd see them. When I was 13 years old, I was actually in the Mogul Ski Club, so I went skiing when I was younger. But in Oklahoma, it snowed my first 3 months there. I started in August. By November, it was snowing on my way to class. It was like fascinating. And so obviously my obsession in weather continued. Every single day I would go and look at the weather maps. I was obsessed with weather maps. In 80, 81, 82, when I started college, I started developing my theory, my hypothesis of cycling weather patterns. It's now a business we can talk about later that I'm trying to grow, and it was. I have students, friends of mine, that said there was early '80s that I started talking about it, but I don't remember it really narrowing in on the cycling weather pattern until '87, '88 after I graduated. But I went to Oklahoma, and here's amazing thing. I was, remember, a big Dodger fan growing up. When I was 14 years old, I used to take the bus to Dodger Stadium, me and a friend of mine. I don't know if kids do that nowadays. I highly doubt it. And we would go to, 20, 30 games that summer. And so I was never a college football fan, never a college sports fan, really. UCLA basketball. But I was a big pro football, huge Los Angeles Rams fan, Dodger fan, King fan, Laker fan. And then when I went to Oklahoma, they gave you these tickets. I guess you had the option to buy the whole season tickets for like $50 or something like that. And so I got the season ticket package for myself. And I went to that first Oklahoma game in 1980. And I was, sold. I'm a big sports fan anyway, and I introduced to college football after I went to Oklahoma. I literally went to the University of Oklahoma and didn't know anything about their football program or basketball program. Yeah. And then, same thing, that fall, when basketball season started, Billy Tubbs, the head coach of the Oklahoma Sooners, his first season in Oklahoma was my freshman year at Oklahoma. Wow. So we were both there for the first time. And the Sooners, against everybody in the Big Eight then, the Sooners were 9-5 at home. And I went to every home game. And they were 0-13 on the road. And their record was 9-18. So they would play like Kansas, Missouri, with Stepanovich and Sunbolt, those guys. And they would come in there, and the Sooners would either win by 1 at home or lose by 7 at home. And then they'd go on the road and lose by 37. I'm like, what the heck? But then Billy Tubbs with Bo Overton, he put the teams together in 81 and 82. And of course he signed Wayman Tisdale. Sooners got really, really good. And then after Wayman Tisdale left, after I graduated from Oklahoma, is when they had the big year with Stacey King and Mookie Blaylock and Ricky Grace and Dave Seeker, the best team in the nation that year. But we lose to Kansas in the national championship game at Kemper Arena. So bad memory. Congratulations, Jazz fans. Now I was a huge Oklahoma Sooner basketball fan then. Still am today, but much bigger then.
You mentioned the secret nature of what your sexuality was. So through college, was this something you just kept as a secret and didn't act on? I kept it as a secret, but I was never hidden. I would go out and socialize still as best I could. I went to the support groups while I was at Oklahoma, but definitely no one knew there that very few people knew there that I was gay. And then when I graduated in '85, I was very fortunate to get an internship at a TV station, and someone said a very bad word on the air. That's how I got my first job. It was the day of the space shuttle disaster, the Challenger disaster. Wow. That day, January, I believe, 28, 1986, I was an intern at the station. I had already started at Oklahoma Education Television Authority, OETA. I was on there every night at 6:30 during this show called the Oklahoma News Report while I was an intern. I got a couple big breaks along the way. And that day, someone said the F word on the air. Wow.
And I got my start that day. That day of Space Shuttle Challenger disaster, the chief meteorologist called me about 11 o'clock in the morning and he called me Lezak. He goes, Lezak. His name is Gary England. He was in the movie Twister. He's a big icon down in Oklahoma. And Gary England calls me. He goes, Lezak, do you hear what happened today? I said, I know this is horrible because we're watching the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster video and everything and live TV. And he goes, no, Paul said on the air, and you got an interview at 2. And so I went in for my interview at 2, and the guy hires me, says I'm not going to get paid. And I said, you can't pay me the lowest pay scale you have here? And he says, yeah, I need to take it or leave it right now. And I said, I'll take it. And it started the next day, and that's how I got my career start, because someone said the F word on the air that morning.
Wow. I was going to ask you, did you, obviously you had the passion for weather, and you are obviously developed all kinds of great models, and that aspect of it was completely fine. Did you find that you were kind of a natural for the television presentation as well?
Yeah. Right away, I was so nervous. But when I was on Norman Cable TV, one of the students convinced the journalism professor he convinced him to allow us meteorologists to go over there during their class. They did a news program at 3:00 in the afternoon, Monday through Friday, just practice newscast. Really, it wasn't that great, obviously, it's a college newscast. And they had us go over there, and I got to do it on a Tuesday. It's a long story on how that happened, but I went in there, and in that class, one of the next week after I did it one time said, Gary, God, you'd be great. There's an internship at this Channel 9 in Oklahoma City, and you should call Gary England and see if you can get an internship. So right away, everyone thought that I had something special to,
right.
But I didn't know. I just was myself. And so got the big breaks, and I quickly became popular in Oklahoma after just a couple of years on the air. And I was there for 6 years, and then moved to Kansas City in 1992.
Tell me about the decision to do that. You said you're popular in Oklahoma City, and Kansas City obviously is a bigger market, but it's not that much bigger a market. What was the decision-making like for you to come to Kansas City?
Well, it was pretty easy because in June of 1992, I got fired.
Okay.
And so I got
Guess
fired.
you weren't that popular, huh?
I was very popular. In 1989, 1990, I had signed my first big contract. I was making about $30,000 a year, and I that's where I began to learn how to negotiate. And I've negotiated my contracts ever since. And but the guy that signed me to that big contract was fired, and then they tried to undo everything he did, and that was 89, 90. So for 2 years, there's a Gary or Lezak, go find a job. So that was Gary, and so for 2 years I looked for a job. I tried to get a job, and finally, 2 years later, they had finally had enough, and I was escorted upstairs after my noon show, got fired, and 2 weeks later, I got this job in Kansas City. A producer friend of mine, her name's Jennifer Graves. She lives in the Kansas City area. She's fantastic. She's an amazing person. She came up here, and she told them about me. And so when I got fired, there was an opening at Channel 4. And so I came up for the interview, and I was at Plaza 3 outside on the plaza having lunch outdoors there. And I believe it was. And I got recognized by somebody from Oklahoma City while I was sitting there being interviewed. And it was like perfect. And they hired me. They it's as if I planted somebody there. And but they hired me a few days later, and I came up in July of 1992.
So tell me how the path leads. Obviously you're not at Channel 4, so tell me about. Give me a thumbnail on the little journey within the Kansas City market.
Well, I started here. The most exciting thing, I was not out of the closet yet. In Oklahoma City, my first 6-7 years on the air, I was closeted, and so I did not come out as at all. No one knew at work that I was in the closet. And then when I came up in 1992, I said, no way, I'm not going to continue down that path. And I immediately came out to people here as I got started. And from 92 to 94 was really interesting. In 1994, Channel 4 went through the switch from, they were NBC, right, and Fox 41 was Fox 41. And in 1994, NBC at Channel 4 became Fox 4, and 41 became NBC. And so we started a brand new show at 7 in the morning, 2 hours long. So all of a sudden there's this 2 hour long local TV show with me and Mike Walter, Kelly Waldo, and Sue Mason, and Johnny Rollins. The 5 of us clicked as a team, and we jumped from low ratings to dominant number one. And that morning show has been number one ever since. And it's been amazing. But from 92 to 99, I was part of that transition and, became pretty popular here in Kansas City. But I always loved, I was a goofball. I'm a goofball. So I have fun and I enjoy the television process. But when it comes down to it, I do the weather. So I may seem like a goofball to some people, but when I do the weather, I do the weather. And I was always very serious about it. And I wanted to be a chief meteorologist. And I wasn't going to be so at Channel 4 with Mike Thompson there. Right. And so in 1998, I saw there was an opening at Channel 41, and I pursued it without an agent, and I worked my way into getting a great offer and leaving Channel 4 and starting at Channel 41 in 1999. January 1st, 1999, I had a 6-month no-compete clause. So I left Channel 4, and I had 6 months where it was the best 6 months of my life, Danny. I was at work, but not really, and I started in July of that year.
This is a very significant span of time in your life in a lot of different ways. You, in 1997, I believe it was, met Andy, and how did that happen?
I met Andy in 1997 to 1998, and that was fascinating. There's a gay bar on Main called Sidekicks, and I often went out there. It's a country western bar, and I went out there, and I thought I was going to meet somebody special that night, and I met Andy that night. He was a student teacher at Northwest Missouri State, and he was teaching a science class, I guess, and he asked me, when I first bumped into him, I said, I've never seen you before. He goes, I've seen you before. And so he asked me this question. He goes, how do we have the 4 seasons? And I spent the next hour trying to answer that question. And that's how our life began.
Through weather, of course.
Yeah, of course. 21 years ago.
So did it become serious pretty quickly?
It did, but I was more enamored by him, and it took a long time. It took about 6 months, 8 months, 10 months before we really hooked up together later on that year.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
Cinematic Visions has been an affordable solution for professional media production in Kansas City since 2003, offering award-winning video production and creation, as well as a wide array of digital and social media management services. From planning, scripting, filming, editing, and post-production, to delivering your product to a watching world, Cinematic Visions will provide professional and affordable services for you and your business with the necessary return on investment to make it all worthwhile. Cinematic Vision's goal is to unlock the power of storytelling through video and a strong online presence for your company. Beyond the numbers, they want to inspire and evoke your clients to feel and act. Let my friends at Cinematic Visions embed your brand where it belongs, in your customers' minds. You can find them online at cinematicvisions.com or with a quick phone call at 816-600-6300. Are you thinking of starting a new business? Does your current business feel stuck? Or are you just trying to grow what you already have? Running a business is a lot of work, and it takes the right team to make it all happen. If you're looking to grow your business, call my friends Ben and Greg over at Fuego Consulting. They put together a company that can help you reach your business goals. Whether you're looking to get online, build a social media strategy, or rebrand your business, they can help. Call Fuego at 816-663-9695 or visit them online at fuegoconsulting.com. Fuego Consulting. Let's grow your business together. My friends at Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture are among the most accomplished and trusted clinics in the nation. Only one clinic has been rated in the top 5 in all 3 categories of chiropractic care, acupuncture, and rehabilitation, and that clinic is ASFCA. They have locations in Olathe, Overland Park, Prairie Village, Belton, and Lee Summit. Doctors Brad and Christina Woodle and their accomplished team of doctors and therapists will treat you like family, for the simplest of injuries to the most complicated conditions to avoid surgery. Whether you are seeking treatment for an injury or just looking to stay healthy and fit, this is the place for you. And it's been the place for me for almost 2 years now. I've been a strenuous daily exerciser for years, and as time goes on, that takes its toll. But regular appointments at Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture have helped keep me ticking on, and even as the years pile up, their regular care has allowed me to keep to my regimen and feel great. If you want to feel the same, give them a call or visit them at asfca.com/Danny. They accept all insurances and are open Monday through Saturday, and make sure to mention that Danny Clinkscale recommended Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture.
For many people, a family law case will be one of the most difficult experiences in their life. The law firm of Kenneth McRae will help you through it. Personal and effective help from Ken in concert with you will develop a unique strategy for your unique case. As Ken always says, divorce can be civil law, not civil war. Licensed in Kansas? Visit McRaeLawOffice.com or call 913-972-4765.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at Danny@DannyClinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you. Our guest is Gary Lezak, a longtime Kansas City icon. I feel very comfortable saying that. Weather enthusiast, and of course you hear him on WHB with his really funny stuff on the Border Patrol and all kinds of good things that he does. We'll get to the dogs and everything else, but a real personal challenge for you came in 1999. We're kindred spirits in that regard. You got an incredibly rare form of cancer. Tell me about that.
Absolutely fascinating, because you just never know when something like that's going to hit you or strike you, or what happened is Andy and I were rollerblading. It's only my second time rollerblading. We had just bought brand new rollerblades. Andy thought it'd be a great idea to rollerblade, and he was trying to teach me how to stop. And we're over around Shawnee Mission Park area, somewhere back in Shawnee, near our house back there, and there's this hill, and he went down the hill, came up the other side. He says, "That's how you stop. Just watch you come up the other side, you'll naturally stop." So I started going down the hill, and within 5 feet, I fell, and I broke my right wrist. And when I had the cast on, when your wrist is broken, when you break your arm in 3 weeks, you actually heal, and you break an arm in half. It's amazing. Right. But the wrist, those bones are so small, I had to have the cast on for 8 weeks because of the restricted blood flow to it. And when I went in to get my cast replaced 3 weeks in, I had this thing growing in my left arm, my other arm. I asked the doctor, "What do you think that is?" And he said, "Oh, probably nothing." And he looked at me and he said, "That's interesting." And he brought his nurse in. He was all concerned. He had me get an ultrasound. The ultrasound doctor was highly concerned. He felt under my armpits. He was so concerned of what it looked like under the ultrasound. Then I had the little biopsy, and I found out 2 days later. The doctor calls me, and I recorded it on my answering machine back then.
Right, exactly.
And I pushed record, and the doctor said, Gary, you have a tumor in your left arm that seems to be quite aggressive, and it has bone growing inside of it, and we would like you to go to a cancer specialist, bone cancer specialist today. And I said, today? Can I set it up for later in the week? Because I'm going to work. And he goes, no, today.
Wow.
So I went to the doctor. The doctor walks out with it seems like an entourage of people, like an assistant and his nurse, and all three of them come into the room with Andy and me sitting there, and he tells me that I have this rare form of bone cancer. It's out of the bone cancer, or called extraskeletal osteogenic sarcoma. Sarcomas are very rare cancers to begin with. And he says that we will do surgery, and then we'll decide what to go from there, but it's probably going to include radiation and chemotherapy. And so I had the surgery. They decided to have the extensive chemotherapy, and I had the most aggressive form of chemotherapy, being 36 years old at the time. They just wanted to really zap me, take me this close to death. And so Andy and I, this is my attitude in life. We were actually somewhat excited about it. We were not pessimistic. We were optimistic. Wow, if I can live through this, I'll have a story to tell and share with kids to inspire them the rest of my life. And so I went through the chemotherapy. I had to be in the hospital for a week at a time for chemotherapy treatments. That's how much they zapped me. And it zapped me. I still tried to go to work, and then I'd have to go back into treatments. And so it never came back. The most likely spot that sarcomas are in your lungs, and I'd have to have a test every 2 months. But 1 year went by, 2 years went by, 3 years went by, 15 years went by, and at the 15th year, my doctor declared me cured. So cancer, there's a way to be cured. Go through the treatment, be extremely aggressive if you can, and stay positive. But yeah, that was quite an experience.
Absolutely, and you've used that in many ways. That's similar to the way I approached it. I was positive. I ended up being able to use it and write a book and everything else. So I always say this. It sounds dumb. Of course, you've survived now when you say this, but it actually ended up being a good thing. I met so many people.
Yep.
I've been able to, have some kind of effect on people's lives and maybe give them a positive message. And the fact that now, if tomorrow they told me I was, it came back, I guess I wouldn't say it was a great thing. But in the end, it can be a great thing, and that's the way you approached it.
And I remember when you were diagnosed and you had your surgery, and I remember what you looked like, and I was scared and concerned for you, but you did have that positive attitude, Danny. I mean, you really did. And so we've both been through these serious cancers,
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me about, were you always a dog lover?
Yeah, I grew up when I grew up in the valley, I had a dog named Jamie and a cat named Todd. Jamie and Todd. Jamie was a Sheltie, and Todd, some kind of cat that got hit by a car, and it was cross-eyed, and it lived a long life. It was a sad day when Todd all of a sudden went missing one night, but Todd had a great life. But Jamie was my dog. I actually brought Jamie. My mom and dad got divorced in 1981, 82 time frame. I think it was 81. And Jamie was about 14 years old at the time, and my mom wanted Jamie, my dad wanted Jamie, and I said, no, I'm taking Jamie. So I took Jamie to college with me. And when I got to my sophomore, junior years, my junior and senior years, I had Jamie with me. I got an apartment, had a couple roommates, and Jamie was my first dog. When I started my career, I had a dog, and Jamie died that year. I was in a big softball league, and back in 1986, and one night Jamie got real sick, and that was obviously very sad. But it was 5 years after Jamie died that I was leaving to come to Kansas City, and I adopted this dog named Wendy. Wendy, the weather dog, was on Oprah Winfrey one day, and she was on Animal Planet. She was pretty famous, And then I've had stormy and breezy and now sunny and rainbow.
That is great. And I assume Andy loves dogs also. If you're going
He loves dogs. He loves all dogs.
Yeah,
Andy has to go kiss every dog.
Yes, that would be a prerequisite, I would guess. Tell me about developing this. Obviously you're so consumed and interested in weather, and you had this germ of an idea about cyclical weather patterns. And how did it come about that you started to really more aggressively go after developing this as something that you now use as a business?
Yeah, it was the winter of 1987, 1988. I got this picture on my wall. I'm looking at it right now behind me, and it's amazing. In 1987, 1988, Oklahoma City, that averages about 8 inches of snow a year. So in other words, they might get 20 inches one year and then no snow for a couple of years. I mean, it's very rare that they get lots of snow. That winter, it snowed in November. There was a 1-foot snowstorm in December, so that's more than their average for the year. Then they had another 1-foot snowstorm in January, and it snowed in March. And I noticed that the storm systems that were producing all these big snowstorms, I noticed that they looked similar in the upper level flow. So they literally looked identical. So it was back then that I really narrowed in that it wasn't a coincidence that the January 1-foot snowstorm in Oklahoma City and the December 1-foot snowstorm in Oklahoma City were not just a coincidence. They were directly related to that year's weather pattern. And in 89, 90, 91, 92, I came to Kansas City, and by then I had developed my theory that the pattern was cycling. And by 2001, when blogging became popular, I started a weather blog, the Action Weather blog at Channel 41, and I called it my theory. The pattern is cycling regularly, and we can predict the weather far in advance, 20, 30, 50, 100 days in advance, now 300 days in advance. And I called it my theory. And the bloggers said it shouldn't be just called your theory. We should call it the GRC, Gary's Recurring Cycle. I'm like, sure, fine, whatever. And then they said, no, the LRC, Lezak's Recurring Cycle. So the bloggers named it the LRC. But it's it's actually one of the most significant discoveries, I believe, that we will develop over the next few years, and I'm trying to do it right now and bring it to market. The LRC is a description of the weather pattern that is cycling regularly. And if you think about cycles, Danny, think about astronomical cycles. In astronomy, the sun rises at the equator every morning at 6, and it sets every night at 6 p.m. 12 hours equal day and night every single day of the year at the equator. All right, so astronomers know this. We know it. So then the Earth rotates on its axis once every 24 hours, perfect cycle, and it rotates around the sun every 365 days for a one-year cycle. Astronomers are so good at predicting these cycles. They're the best forecasters in the world. They can tell us in 2035 that there will be an eclipse at a certain point at a certain second of the day, and they will be right exactly to the second because the cycles are regularly occurring above us. So why wouldn't the weather patterns of the Earth be cycling just as regularly? They are, except for it's a fluid. So since it's a fluid, it oscillates a little bit.
Right.
Okay, so this year's cycle is about 58.5 days, 58 to 59 days, close to 2 months. I've made a prediction that we'd have a severe weather outbreak somewhere in the United States, maybe even Kansas City, around April 10th, months ago. And here we are coming to that date, and models are starting to show it happening. We'll see where that severe weather lines up, hopefully not here in Kansas City. But we're able to predict to a precision down to a series of dates, if not down to a date. That's what the LRC is all about.
What would be the benefit of this for farming or for emergency preparedness? What kind of benefits can you get from it?
Well, that's what we're trying to showcase. It benefits every business that is weather sensitive. And how many businesses are weather sensitive?
Many.
For example, Walmart, Nordstrom. If Nordstrom knew on February 25th that there would be a major cold outbreak, and we can predict it, they wouldn't put out their spring wardrobe on February 15th. They would wait till March 1st to put it out on some years. Because otherwise, if they put out their spring wardrobe and it's brutally cold for 2 weeks, then that spring wardrobe will sit there and no one will go and buy it. They could have had winter clothes up there for another couple of weeks. So just one store, it impacts them thousands of dollars. And just think of that, that's retail. And transportation, hurricanes. We have been able to predict hurricanes down to a series of dates down to like September 4th in a certain location in the Gulf of Mexico. If every business, even a coffee shop, if they know there's going to be a hurricane during that week, or the bigger businesses, hotel industry, they can staff accordingly. There's ways where it's going to impact every weather-sensitive business, and understanding 100 days out, there is value, and that's what I'm trying to bring to the market.
Not finally, we're close to finally, but you've always also been very interested, and maybe more as time has gone on. I don't know if this was developed after your situation with cancer, but in physical fitness. You're a big gym guy for a long time. You're a big guy, and how did that come about?
Well, I've always been interested in staying in shape. I mean, we're from way back, even back when I was in high school. My friend Mark Rizzo was into working out a lot, so I've always worked out and always had somewhat of a routine. But when I got a little older, I got a little more serious on trying to continue to stay in shape, and working out for everyone. And if you're not regularly working out right now, just think of it as a 3-week plan to get started and make it real simple. And start simple, maybe 20 minutes a day once we get out of quarantine. My goodness, it's challenging right now, but 20 minutes a day can be 3 or 4 days a week, 1 week. Second week, 30 minutes a day, 4 days a week. And the third week, maybe 40 minutes a day, 4 days a week. You'll be into a routine and do all of your body parts, back one day, chest one day, legs one day. Arms get worked out no matter what. You can do arms, but you don't have to. And right now, while we're going through this COVID-19 coronavirus human experiment that's going on right now around the world, I've been doing push-ups, and I can do 300 push-ups. Not at once, but 30, then 20, then 20, then 30, then 40, then 50, then 20, then 30. You get to 300 push-ups, and that's a great workout.
Absolutely. And to make this sort of current before a final question for you, we've seen, and people have said that, we don't really want to have been in this situation, but from the atmospheric standpoint and some other aspects, the fact that people are staying inside and driving less and everything else, this can have a benefit maybe for our atmosphere and our environment.
Absolutely. I mean, I haven't studied it yet, but I've just heard reports. It makes sense. Los Angeles and the big pollution cities, London, etc. It's got to be completely clearing out the air, because the cars are the biggest pollution source for those cities. And so, with people traveling less and staying at home, there's an impact. When it comes to the global climate change, the Earth is warming up. And whether it's caused by man or not, right now, this little experiment, I'm sure there's less carbon dioxide going up into the atmosphere. There may be a small, subtle impact, but it's going to be subtle, because within a month or two, we're going to get back to our new normal. I don't think this is the new normal, Danny. This is the chaotic reality of now. The new normal comes in the next few months. Whatever that is, it's going to settle into whatever the new normal is. That's coming. This is not normal by any means.
Right. And finally, you obviously, you mentioned your positive attitude during cancer. You just seem to have a positive attitude in general. So it seems like life has been and continues to be pretty darn good for Gary Lezak.
It is. But as you get closer to retirement, you start to think about it when you're in your late 50s. And so I'm hoping weather 2020 blasts off here. 41 Action News has been just amazing experience for 21 plus years. I hope it goes on a while longer. And I'm not sure exactly what holds for the next few years, but I'm beginning to think about what holds for the next few years. But yes, I love life. I get a little emotional at times. But I love it, and I love the Chiefs, the Royals. I mean, in the last 5 years, I can't believe we've had a World Series championship. We've had a Super Bowl championship, and this year was it's just amazing. If this crisis would have struck 2 months earlier, we might not have had a Super Bowl. But let's don't think about that, because we did have a Super Bowl, and and Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs and Andy Reid. This team is going to be pretty good for a long time, and it's exciting. So I'm proud and excited to be part of Kansas City and our community. I do a lot of events around town, and it's great to see everyone. I'm glad people enjoy when I do the weather and share with people. And I love it, Denny. So, yeah, life is good. It is.
This podcast was made possible by our great sponsors like Easton Roofing, the presenting sponsor of Kansas City Profiles at the Danny Klingscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Easton Roofing, where integrity matters. We hope you enjoyed the latest Danny Klingscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Come back soon for something fresh and new.